All right, welcome back. Professor Ken Ife, development economist, joins me right now from London. Good morning, Prof, and thank you for joining us.
Oh, hi, good morning, and thanks for having me.
Now, let's get started, but I would like to know what your opinions really are about the Nigerian economy, at least in the past few weeks. I haven't spoken to you in a while. So, what are your thoughts on where we are presently in terms of inflation, in terms of the FX rate, and in terms of the debt servicing that is higher than the revenue we're making? I'd really like to have your thoughts on that for just about 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think, first of all, what we need to take on board is the fact that we are still a largely import dependent economy. All our attempts to diversify have not actually shifted that position, but we are doing a lot more. The thing is that in that respect, Nigeria is on the transmission belt of global supply chain. Anything that happens globally affects Nigeria. You've seen the COVID, you've seen even the American-China trade conflict affects Nigeria. Ukrainian, Russia affects Nigeria, not because we are not producing oil and gas, but because those people we are importing from, 40% of the gas goes to Europe. And the things we're importing from there are subject to all those increases in prices. And then, of course, the diesel what we're importing and all that have gone 400% in increase in price. So we are heavily affected. And the last one is that America at the beginning of this year in January, America's index, USD index, which is a basket of currency that you use against dollar. That is a basket of yen, pounds, dollar, euro, and all of that. It was 94.5 index, but just a week ago, it has risen to 107, and it's going to go to 115. Now, what does that tell you is that America has reflated their dollar. The dollar has gone very, very strong, over 12%. And that has knock-on effect on most economies of the world that are tied to a dollar or anything. Even euro is now 1 to 1. Euro and dollar it used to be 20% expansion. So all of that has affected Nigeria, especially the forex arena. They're all affecting us in a very special way.
Okay, now let's dig into the FX, Nigeria's exchange rate, particularly in the last few months. Also taking it from where you stopped in terms of the dollar strength, and you're right that we've seen the dollar strengthening. We've seen the euro almost at par, and now with the dollar. But do we really? What are our own peculiar problems? Because I don't really want to say that totally that's our problem because of the dollar strength. I do know that it would impact. But what are our peculiar problems as regards to foreign exchange? That's the exchange rate.
Exchange rate is a pricing mechanism, just like monetary policy rates, inflation, all of those, interest rates in the bank, they're all about prices. And whenever there's price, you have to think about how do you resolve demand and supply that are at play. So, and Nigeria's forex situation is that about 70 to 80% of that forex that we get and use depend on crude remittances from the crude and gas. And of course, I mean, there are arguments, but we haven't been getting that throughout last year. All we just had was a report that says that 1.786 billion has been remitted by NNPC. Look at that. Over 6 months, that is $300 million. How does that compare to 3 to 3.4 billion dollars that we are being received every month from 2014? So it's a drop. It's less than 10%. Now, where does the CBN get the remaining 20%? They have to look for it through diaspora remittance that has peaked to $26 billion and now about $100 million a week, 5 point something billion is fallen. Then where is FDI? FDI is not here. Neither is portfolio investment. NDI has dropped from over 8 billion and now it's about $200 million. All of them are exiting uh, all countries and heading back to America, where the interest rate is going up, where the dollar has got very strong, and where they know there is less speculation on their currency. And then you now come into here and say, what else can the CBN do to raise dollars? It doesn't have machines here to print dollars. It's just about what it can scratch, and it's about scratching on for dollar. That is what it is. Then you look at the demand side of the forex; it's completely untamed from 2017, when they had this 31 items that were delisted, which were not banned, these are still active in the market. These items are still active in the market, being bought. And I call them frivolous items because if you look at the trade balance between Nigeria and China, it's over 2 trillion. 2 trillion of buying what? Frivolous items. And those are some of the items that have been restricted, but are still having a field day in the capital, in the black market, purchasing dollars. But that is not the only story around dollar. The fact is that there is heavy speculation on our naira and dollar in relation. So people are, when you speculate that this currency is going to drop by another 20%, you just scramble and buy it and hold on. After a month, you go and sell, you make 20% for doing nothing. Now that is the pattern. And then you have the political climate where politicians are looking for dollar, less bulky to use to settle. Who wants to collect 20 billion naira from you? They want dollar in a small envelope. And then you have all the other people that are pricing their goods in dollar because they are not sure about the value of naira. All of them are feeding speculation. And many things are going on here. Then you have the structural factors that are also at play, exacerbated by insecurity. And all of them are pushing costs. And you find wherever you go. And the thing that those who are importing with impunity, and then knowing that they can transfer all that imported inflation down to the consumer. And that's why it's become unmanageable, the forex situation. But having said that, the CBN is just doing the best that it can under the current circumstances, but the odds are heavily against it. Not made by it, but brought by extraneous factors.
Okay, Prof. Let's distinguish this, because I know that a lot of people fall into the trap of, saying that the BDC rate is also the same rate as the parallel market. Is there a difference between the BDCs, who are the Bureau de Change operators that are licensed by the Central Bank of Nigeria, and the street market operators? Like here in Abuja, you go to Zone 4, even while you're in your car, they just come close to your car. You can change $100 there quickly. Is that a difference between the street market operators, otherwise known as the black market operators, and the BDCs?
No, I don't really see much difference because the central bank is not supplying dollars at the moment to the BDCs, which are meant an obligation on them to sell at particular rates for the invincibles. So they have a few there. But there are obviously, even as you go from one person to the other, you're going to see a discrepancy. But what I will say to you about this is that about 93% of the forex transactions are actually happening in the official window. It's only about 7%, that is the IO window, NAFEX window. That is what is where the bulk is still taking place. It's only that 7% that is in the black market that is creating all this confusion and all this anxiety that we are having. So, people are saying float naira for what? If there is a prospect of the demand and supply ever meeting, then you can say, okay, let's float it to get the market control, but it's not going to be possible. The central bank requires $1.8 billion every month to fund import. And if NNPC is giving it an average of 300 in 6 months, where do you expect CBN to get the balance? I have just explained to you that it's not coming from the remittance, it's not coming from FDI, it's not coming from this. Where is it going to come from? Government will have to go and borrow more dollars, but to service dollar, you may have to have service dollar loans, dollar denominated loans. So, I'm curious, where is he getting the dollar from? So you could see the odds stacked against official transfers.
Prof, I don't know if I'm still satisfied with your answer in terms of that you're equating the BDC guys and the black market operators. Because the BDC guys, from what the central bank has done, should be able to source their own FX. The CBN is not supplying the BDC guys anymore. They were doing that earlier until they did scrap it. You are in London and you know what is happening there. Would you really equate those guys, the BDC guys that are licensed, that have those licenses, until recently that the CBN said they are not going to be giving any new licenses, to the black market guys? Or are the BDC people now operating the black market space, whereby they have their staff on the streets of Lagos, Port Harcourt, Abuja and all of that, indulging in the black operations of currency trading?
Well, the thing is that I go to those. I go to the BDC in Sheraton Hotel. I go to the people on the street. I see virtually little difference in how they are paid, that charging. And then I ask the BDC operators themselves, they have no obligation. They have no obligation to tow any particular exchange rates, as far as I see, with them, because official window is 412, 415, around 420. That's where it's swinging. And they're nowhere near those. They go there for dollar, they're telling you they want 600, 700, up to 710 now. You have 700, 710. I can't see any major difference between what is going on the street and what is going on inside those rooms where the BDCs are. And they just don't have any obligation to sell you at any rate that you are asking for. I do know that sometimes, I don't know whether it's happening now, there are some commercial banks that could do you a dollar for 460, 65, something like that, just a 20% differential from 10% differential from what they get from. But there's no such, I can't see any those alignments, any such alignment in the black market and BDC. But correct me if I'm wrong.
Mm. Okay, I think we can leave that there. Let's talk about some of the policies that the Central Bank of Nigeria introduced, at least in the last few months, to help save the Naira. And we will analyze it. Take a look at the Naira for dollar scheme, whereby the CBN did say that it will be giving 5 Naira for every dollar that is gotten through remittances. How has that fared? We also have the IMTOs that at the time the CBN did say, okay, if you're getting forex from your relatives outside the country, you can get it over the counter in that currency instead of exchanging it to the Naira. We also have the policy around the RT 200 billion dollars scheme introduced by the Apex Bank also. So, Prof, I would like you perhaps to start from the Naira to dollar scheme, which was introduced last year, I think precisely March 8th.
As far as I know, those policies are still in force. The IMTOs under obligation to pay me in dollar if I was remittance was meant for me in dollar. Those obligations are there, and I also know that the CBN has incentivized those exporters with export domiciliary accounts. If you receive your proceeds in dollar and you want to sell part of that to the official market, you get $65 per dollar incentive. If you want to use some of your proceeds to import legitimate and approved items, you get 35 Naira incentive. So all those are still in place, as far as I know. And of course, the RT $200 billion in the next 3 years is just a flagship project that says we've had enough of a supply-based action. Let's deal with demand, demand and supply. Let's try and then match demand with supply, saying, okay, get more forex, target all the resources that can earn us forex, and then here are the set of incentives that we're going to give to ensure that you have an unmitigated flow. And hopefully in the next 3 years, the commercial banks will take over their own funding of their proceeds of their requests. So those are the pipeline that actually shows how serious CBN is in trying to address this forex issue from the supply and demand perspectives.
Do you think that the central bank has really done enough? If you're saying that the CBN is indeed serious to saving the Naira, how far has it gone? Because it seems that for every policy that the CBN brings out, you know, you would also see like almost the depreciation of the Naira. Are there any other magic bullets that the Central Bank of Nigeria can use to save the Naira at this point? Because that is the apex bank that everyone is pointing to, that, oh, CBN has, you know, CBN has not really saved the Naira at this point.
I think people are being unfair to CBN, to be honest, because they expect the CBN to solve all the problems in the country. And then a lot of those problems are actually outside the scope of monetary policy. For example, over half of Nigerians are poor, 50%, 100 million. 40% of them are not even in the banking sector. 40% of them, 80 million, are below poverty line. So now, what is the effectiveness of the transmission of monetary policy if you talk about them going there? And then you come to the people drawing money, those who are capable, 42 million MSMEs, which are 50, which are about 48% of the whole MSMEs in Africa. There are 90 million in Africa. About 48% are in Nigeria. Those are struggling. Their most chronic problem is how do they access finance? And then you now turn around to what the infrastructure constraint is happening, is dealing to them. The power and all that shortages and transport costs, how it's impacting on their economic sustainability and the productive capacity. So all of those, and then you come into the banking sector and say, okay, who is actually taking money off the banks? Those who are capable of taking money off the banks, you have questions about whether the money that are borrowing from the bank is actually going to add to productivity, or are they just taking this money for another pretext and they use it to import goods that they can sell quickly and then hit up the foreign exchange. So we have big challenges in our country. And then you don't think that you should all leave it to monetary policy. I keep saying that policies should support each other. Trade policy, fiscal policy, and monetary policy, they should all work in hand. If the monetary authority has restricted 41 items for very good reasons, and then turned around on backward integration to fund the backward integration agenda, I expect the fiscal authority to use levy instrument to raise the effective tax on these goods to make government earn more money from those who are trying to import frivolous items. And I expect the trade policy to jump in and go to WTO and say that they should work together and not one person, leaving one man standing. In 2017, this country would have collapsed if the CBN wasn't the last man standing. All other policies went on our own. And we can continue to have that. We should have a very good measure of alignment between these policies to ensure that we can all send correct messages to those who are violating that the time is over. But that's not happening. Then what else? Look at okay, let's take an example. You asked me about the efficacy of CBN policies. Now, they have turned to unorthodox policy, domestic finance intervention, to be able to deliver credit to the most vulnerable. Now, if you look, he had a meeting with the CEOs of all the banks. Please, we want to get into agriculture. So what do we do? First, you have to de-risk agriculture. All right, $500 million to set up NISAL and then go and de-risk up to 80%. Is that enough? No. We want to know who we are lending money to. Know your customer. Then biometric verification came into force. They capture your face, they capture your fingerprint. Now the banks were happy with that. But they said, but how do we know who we are lending to? Where is the farm? That they will brought satellite coordinates. So we now have to capture the satellite coordinate, put it all on CBN portal. Then what again? Oh, obligo limit. We want to reduce the amount we can lend to the, okay, one farmer, 1 hectare, between 200 and 400,000 naira. That's fine. Then they're going along with, but how do we recover our money? All right, GSI, Global Standing Instruction. If they don't pay, we'll sweep the account. At the moment, about 90% of repayment is coming on from the prime anchor borrowers, but then the other ones, the community-based cooperatives, are a bit slow in coming. But it will come. And we don't want to decisively deal with them because you're going to scare them away from the grains, other grains we are attacking, wheat and others that we are going to go after. So we just have to manage the situation. But who should be crying about this? It's the commercial banks that they should be crying. Because after all, what the CBN has done is to push the banks, to push the commercial banks, create a differential cash reserve ratio to tell them, look, I have over 4 trillion naira of your money here. Come and borrow it because they're earning zero interest. Put it in. So they're encouraging the banks, and with their consent, using some of their CRR to fund all this development. And then increasing their ratios to make sure that there's more liquidity going to the private sector. This is what it has done, created a special SME window from the forex regime. Everything that can be done to help MSMEs in this country has been done by this most friendly commercial bank, central bank. But people don't see that. What they are moaning about is, 1 trillion that is put in anchor borrowers, you can't find it. How can you say that when 4 trillion is going into the drain on so-called subsidy? This is private sector money that is borrowed by private sector. Whose business is it? It's the business of the banks, and the banks are not screaming. Other people are crying, more than the bereaved. Talk about the NNPC burning 4 trillion of our money and putting it into a deep hole where we cannot recover from it. I think that's where the argument should stand.
Okay. Prof, I'll be coming back to you later after this break for us to talk about politicians in 2023 elections and perhaps their role in this Naira volatility which we've seen. We'll also be taking a look. I know you just mentioned the CBN, what the CBN is doing. But I would also ask you if Emefiele and his team should be totally exonerated from what is happening, because a lot of people have been pointing out to Emefiele as the cause of the Naira volatility. He's been taking, the blame and the heat. We'll be coming back to that in a bit. Let's quickly take this break.
Do you want to live your life financially free? Do you want to take your business to the next level and succeed? Then the time is now.
MONEYLINE with Nancy on AIT presents
the Personal and Business Acceleration Masterclass, a live conference geared at revealing top secrets by elite business experts and life coaches in Nigeria on ways to improve yourself, business, and create wealth. Date, Saturday 17 September 2022. Venue, Nigerian Export Promotion Council, Plot 424. Agunyi Ronsi Street, Maitama, Abuja. Time, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. To register, visit www.moneylinewithnancy.com/pabam.
For more inquiries and sponsorships, contact 0814-833-9088 or 0906-691-2600 and info@moneylinewithnancy.com. Don't miss this opportunity to greatness.
Well, as far as we are concerned, what we do is that from central bank we monitor liquidity in the system. As we see that there's excess liquidity, we will continue to use our discretionary powers to move those liquidity from the vault of the banks so that they do not get involved or in speculative activities with people who want to speculate with the currency, or those who want to. As for those who want to take naira from the account to buy dollar because of election, I want to warn, not advise, that it is illegal to do so, whereas it will sound more convenient that you should carry dollar, because you can carry those little dollars but with a lot of value in your pocket. But if the security agencies hold you, you know the implication of that. We will continue from our own side. We have our own apparatus through which we monitor movement of funds between customers, or between banks and customers, or from one bank to the other bank. And any bank that will find in those kind of transactions that we consider to be unauthorized or that we consider to be illegal, you can imagine that your account will be placed on PND. What does PND mean? Post-no debit. When your account is placed on post-no debit, it means you will never be able to conduct banking transactions in any bank in Nigeria. It is a very injurious tool that the central bank uses. You can see, central bank has turned itself into a monster that uses an injurious tool to stop you from conducting illegal flows, whether domestic or foreign currency. So I will advise you not to get involved in unauthorized and illegal movement of money from your bank to your account, or from one account to another account, or in currency conversion. When you do that and you are caught in that practice, your account will be placed on PND. A couple of people have come back to us to say, our examiners that placed the account on PND were not very accurate. And I said, it is not possible. Before we do, we conduct a thorough investigation. We have proof to see to what you have done illegally. And your account will be placed, you will be barred from conducting banking transactions all over Nigeria.
All right, welcome back. I've been speaking with Professor Ken Ife, who is a development economist. Professor Ife, I hope you're still there, and I hope that you saw.
I'm here.
Okay, so you saw that video, that visual. We had to bring it back. That was said by the central bank governor at the last MPC meeting in July, talking about the PNB, which is the post-no debits action that will be taken on those that speculate on the naira. And he was also particular about the politicians in 2023 elections. And that brings me to that. What do you think is the role of politicians moving forward, especially in currency speculation? How do you think that the CBN should be able to attack this? Because we see campaigns will start next month. From my own information that I've been gathering here and there, I know that there's a lot of dollars that the politicians are buying now to influence voters to vote for them, vote buying. And they are storing the dollars right now to influence voters come the election day. What can be done really to these politicians, especially the central bank and some other agencies like the EFCC, the police, and all of that, to save the Naira really?
Well, I think the most important thing that you can do is to increase the supply of dollar into the system. That's number one, because it's about demand and supply. And then on the other hand, you can, we have the agencies that have the job to do this. We have EFCC, ICPC, we have them. We have run short of those agencies that should be given the teeth to bite. And the cases are there. Go and watch the election. You see them sharing the money there in the booth. So it's not the CBN that will go there. It is the law enforcement agency that know what they need to do. So CBN can only blow the whistle, but these guys have to enforce. But by and large, I think if you're thinking of the transmission, that's a very transient thing. It will probably end by February when they finish the election. But on a permanent basis, we need to deal with a permanent source of arresting the decline. And I think it's about the supply. Increasing the supply, which, as you see, the RT $200 billion is the right way to go on that. And then, of course, on the reduction on the demand. And I've mentioned some of the policy aspects, because there's no point letting the traders get away with it. They have to pay a heavy price for importing frivolous items. Let them pay more tax to the government. The government needs tax. We're only at 7% of our GDP, the revenue, which is the lowest in Africa. The average should be 18%. ECOWAS macroeconomic convergence criteria says 20%. We're nowhere near that. We need to raise those revenues. So wherever you think you can grab money from people who are abusing the system, tax the hell out of them and then let the money go to the coffers. But of course, at the heart of all this is the role of NNPC. And I have to tell you this, we have to deal with this matter with the seriousness that it deserves. If you cannot remit this sufficient to enable us meet the $1.8 billion monthly allocation, even if you can't give us $3 billion, give us $2 billion so that we can meet the obligation, or even $1 billion to $1 to $5 billion a month to meet the obligation. And the long-term future is not in what they are doing, direct cruise swap. And I don't even know whether it passes the law. You are doing direct cruise swap to refiners and then bringing back the refined product and now telling government, you know what, all that thing that I've sold, the money doesn't match the proceed. So you're now saying to the government that you're going to go and find another 500 billion naira every month to subsidize, to deal with the under recovery. How long are we going to go with that?
Prof.
We can't. Just look at debt servicing is almost equal to government revenue. Then you haven't even talked about the interest that should be payable on the bank overdraft, CBN bank overdraft to government. That is going to be substantial. We're not even talking about that. And then you're talking about defense that is already taking 22% of our budget. As salary is not going to be paid, pension, all of that, we just can't do that. So I have suggested many times what we should do with our NNPC right now. NNPC is doing some refining, is repairing some of the petroleum refinery, yes, but you can invest money in 5 modular refineries. Just put small money, 10% or 22%, you can supply them crude and they can refine. In 6 months, they will come on stream. And then you see that some of those your redundant workers you are paying salary for doing nothing will be absorbed. So whilst that is going on, I think a policy should come out. And that policy should say, you are not going to lift our crude or bring any petroleum product until you show me your modular refinery. So all those companies that are moving this crude, let them show us their refinery on the ground. That's what Dangote had to do when Obasanjo said you cannot meddle with cement until you show me where you are producing cement. Just announce that policy. I can tell you 6 months will stop this problem, because all of those people, those companies that are carrying crude and carrying oil, they are capable of starting 1 or 2 modular refineries overnight because they have the money. They don't need to go and borrow 35 billion. They have the money to start all these modular refineries. Just announce that policy. You are not going to get into the supply chain unless you show me your factory. You'll see what will happen, your refinery. All this problem will be past tense. Then secondly, of course, remember that Saudi Arabia is one of the richest countries in the world, but they needed to borrow $25 billion. He didn't go to World Bank or IMF. He said, go and tell me the value of Saudi Aramco. And when they found that it was over 1 trillion, he said, oh, God, quote it in the market, sell 5%. And that's how they got the money. NNPC is right. It's now a private company. We should think about valuing the asset. They are telling me that it is a net asset is $60 billion. I know it's more than $100 billion. 30% of that is $30 billion. You can solve a lot of problem in our country with $30 billion. You can take 15 billion to reduce the loan, the outgoing. You can put 5 billion to NNPC to recapitalize them, make them stronger. And then you can capitalize all the development banks. BOI, Bank of Agriculture, Development Bank of Nigeria, Nexim Bank. If you recapitalize them, then they can take over all these domestic finance intervention Central Bank is doing over time, because Central Bank will not stay on this program forever. It's a transient program. They might decide to exit next year. So you have to refinance, recapitalize this development bank so that they can carry this program going forward. If you don't do it, more people would have died of poverty and hunger and starvation and COVID than all the Boko Haram victims put together. So it is this intervention in agriculture that has made sure Nigeria remained outside of the poverty crisis and food crisis over the last 3 years. So we have to take this matter very seriously and broaden the participation of others in this.
Prof, your recommendation just stuck a nerve with me in terms of NNPC. The recommendation you just made for NNPC, let's try and monetize their assets, and you said that those assets may be in excess of $100 billion, and just take a few of them, and recapitalize some of the development banks. I think that's actually something we should look at, and I hope that those that are in charge of all this would listen. Even it should actually also take political will. But just as we end the program, that you said earlier, and I heard you clearly, that the temporal solution to this, to avoid the Naira's free fall, is perhaps to supply the markets with the dollars. Do you think that the CBN is well equipped right now to supply the markets with dollars? I do know that the FX reserves is within the band of $39 billion. How do you think that the CBN can defend the Naira to avoid its free fall right now? And just also as we close, do you think that all thefts, there's also a cost for all theft in what we're seeing in Naira's volatility? So I want you to answer that in just less than 2 minutes so that we can go.
Well, if only central bank can tell you what more is in the armory in respect of increasing the flow of dollar into the economy. It's all by incentive. Private sector responds to incentive. You know that. It is the incentive you offer the private sector that they're quick to respond to. And they know that they could offer more incentive. They could widen the scope of the current incentive. And then there are people that also, I don't know, this thing about amnesty. You can't tell me that if we have $600 billion of our oil money out here, abroad here, that there cannot be anything in the region of amnesty, however that is played out, that can make people bring some of their money back. And then we'll borrow against those money, we'll give them very, very good rates. And then that has always been on the table. And it's one way of dealing with this in a rather short period of time.
Thank you very much, Prof. At least thank you. We've been talking for the last 35 to 40 minutes. And it seemed that we could not even really, talk about all the issues. But I'll have you again, just those minutes just ran by quickly, and I'm wondering, oh, Nancy, have I really exhausted my questions? I haven't, because as we were talking, there were other issues coming forth. But thank you very much, Prof, for being a part of the show today, and let's talk soon.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, I've been speaking with Professor Kenife, who is a development economist, and we've been looking at the Naira's volatility That's the much we can take on today's edition of the program. Thank you all for watching. Be the best you can be and be the change that you want to see. I am Nancy Nnaji. Bye now.